Jordan Jardin. I am live. It is Thursday, September 6th. I am live on Facebook. I am live on Periscope. And I am live on YouTube. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. Hold on one second. Am I still live? Yes, I am live. It is a very, very busy news day. It's been a very, very busy news week. Let me just double check that I'm live on YouTube. Fantastic. I am live. Very busy day indeed. I don't know where you live in the United States. Maybe some of you live around the world. But climate change, my friends, climate change is here. The humidity in New York City this summer, which is not over yet, the humidity in New York City this summer, and that is still going on, is insane. Like, honestly, I don't even want to leave my apartment if I don't have to. It is so hot. It is attributed to global warming. I don't know where you live. Let me know in the comments if not only it is hot where you are, but humid. It is not supposed to be this humid in the beginning of September in New York City. So, just throwing that out there so everyone can pay attention. Yeah, this is not a pleasant sauna. This is a sign of climate change, and it's getting worse every single year. And it's not going to change with this president. And frankly, even if we get a Democrat in there, we're not doing enough together to combat climate change. So that's my piece on that. Definitely press the share button on Facebook. Definitely press the share button on YouTube. Definitely press the share button on Periscope. Yesterday, I covered the Trump circus. I don't plan on covering this Trump circus today. I think there's plenty. If you want the Trump circus, plenty of coverage of that on CNN, MSNBC, in the New York Times, and elsewhere today. And if you're noticing that my head is kind of tilted that way, it's because I screwed up my neck. So apologies that I'm not looking straight into the camera, but my neck is a little messy. So that's a public service announcement. And on YouTube, as a reminder, on YouTube, this is a super chat. So if you're feeling super, hit me up on the super chat. So, want to start with a story that in a sane media environment, if we had a sane media environment in this country, this would be leading the evening news. This would be leading cable news, and it would be all over the New York Times and other places. But because we don't have a sane media environment, because we have media that essentially is TMZ light, the TMZ-ification of news, which I've been saying for a while now, this is not leading the newscast tonight, but it should be. It should be. And dang, going to a concert with my daughter. I'll have to catch this later. Enjoy the concert, Gene. Reading some comments before I get started. So, just your average weekday here. So, of course, another mass shooting in America. One that barely getting any coverage other than local news and a couple minutes on cable news. This morning in Cincinnati, a gunman opened fire, I think right at Fifth Third Bank, killed 3 innocent people, and had, I believe, over 100 rounds of ammunition. 3 people dead. Pretty much zero coverage of another mass shooting. The choice covering a mass shooting in Cincinnati where a gunman killed 3 innocent people versus who wrote the Trump piece? Who wrote the anonymous piece on the New York Times saying Trump is immoral? Mass shooting? Who done it? The media coverage now is like that book Clue. It was this person in the parlor with the poker stick. It's shameful. Let me read you exactly what happened in Cincinnati, so we're all clear what's going on here. Hey, 4 people, including the gunman, are dead following what police called an active shooter situation in downtown Cincinnati. It happened around 9 a.m. Thursday at Fifth Third Center on Walnut Street, a 30-story building that's home to regional banker Fifth Third Bancorp and other businesses. Police said the gunman, identified as Omar Enrique Perez, 29, entered the building through a loading dock and made his way to the lobby of the office building. Perez shot 5 people. 3 people were killed by the gunman, officials said. The victims haven't been identified, and apologies to the deceased if I mispronounce the names. The victims have been identified as Prithvi Raj Kandepe, Richard Newcomer, and Luis Felipe Calderon, according to the Hamilton County coroner. 2 others were wounded. Perez was confronted by 4 Cincinnati police officers inside the building, officials said, and a shootout commenced. Perez was killed in the shootout, Cincinnati Police Chief Elliot Isaac said. Isaac also said the shooter acted alone and there is no further threat to the public. Until tomorrow, right? No officers were injured in the incident and Perez's motives remain unclear. Police confirmed that Perez was not a current or former employee of the bank. Quote, "This could have been a bloodbath beyond imagination," Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Dieters said. "It could have been a lot worse. People in this town should just thank a cop when they see them because what they did today was just unbelievable," he said. Isaac said that Perez had 1 weapon on him, a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, and had several hundred rounds of ammunition. Let me repeat, several hundred rounds of ammunition. It appears the gun was purchased legally. Dieters said that several officers fired through the glass of the building in an attempt to thwart an active shooter situation. Officials with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office confirmed they are searching the apartment of the now dead gunman in North Bend, Ohio, a sleepy riverside community of Cincinnati's west side. The chaos unfolded alongside Fountain Square, the heavily trafficked park at the city center. Witnesses heard more than a dozen gunshots ring out as they walked to work during the morning rush. Several nearby buildings were placed on lockdown as the situation unfolded. SWAT teams swept several of those buildings to ensure safety and to search for possible additional victims. Senator Rob Portman has released a brief statement. I ain't even going to read it because he doesn't care about mass violence because he votes against stronger background checks. I'm not reading Rob Portman's statement. Officials with Third Bank released a statement in the wake of the shooting saying, in part, "Our thoughts and prayers, blah, 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 blah." I want to get, there's a quote that I read earlier. Let me find it. 1 second. Here we go. This is not normal, and it shouldn't be viewed as normal. This is abnormal. No other industrialized country has this level of active multiple shootings on a regular basis, Mayor John Cranley said in a news conference. I think there's something deeply sick at work here. University of Cincinnati Medical Center received victims with gunshot wounds, a woman and 3 men, said Kelly Martin, senior director of UC Health. 2 died and 1 is in critical condition. Quote, "I heard about 8 gunshots and I actually got on my knees. I kind of got down on the ground and then all the cops started coming." Witness James Walker. "I'm still shaking." So, here's John Kasich, the governor. "There was a senseless act of gun violence on the streets of Cincinnati this morning. I've spoken with the mayor. I don't care what he has to say because he also is bought off by the NRA. So, I got to be honest with you, as numb as you guys are to constantly seeing this day by day, and again, press the share button, get this out to as many people as you can, as numb as you all are of seeing this and hearing this, that is how numb I am of having to report this. It's kind of difficult to have something new or unique to say about mass shootings that pretty much happen once a week, sometimes twice a week. This time at a bank, another time at a mall, another time at a concert, school after school. It doesn't stop. You could say, oh, mental health, the conservatives and the thoughts and prayers warriors. But there's a common thing happening here. Do you see on your Twitter, do you see anywhere reports, 5 dead, 10 dead, 17 dead from stabbings? Do you see weekly massacres with, poker sticks? Press the share button on YouTube. It's getting suppressed as usual, this feed. Do you see on your Twitter feed, do you see in the news once a week or twice a week, massacre by super soaker? I mean, at some point, the people are going to have to revolt in order to save their lives and their children's lives. Because at this point, no one is safe. And it's been that way for a while. And by the way, the media is allowing it. The media has allowed this to be normalized. That's why I've led tonight's live stream with this story, which isn't a sexy story, which isn't going to get me clicks like starting with Trump would. But the reason this keeps happening, not the only reason, but a major reason, is because we have a media in this country, CNN, for example, who thinks it's just okay to write an article on it, move on, who just thinks it's now commonplace, it's normal. That week after week, sometimes multiple times a week, people just get blown up, get shot dead, get massacred. That's the price of freedom, right? That's the price of the Second Amendment. Why did this guy have hundreds of rounds of ammunition? Why is it that in America, you could buy a gun with no psychiatric evaluation whatsoever? You could go buy a gun tomorrow. No one's going to check your mental health history. Half the time, you could buy a gun at a gun show. No one's checking anything. They say in the story, this guy bought his gun legally. Okay. Then we need to change the laws. Then we need to help weed out people that are mentally unstable or racist or Islamophobic. But the common denominator is there are more guns in supply than citizens in this country. And we're not doing a damn thing about it. Not a damn thing. I can't even count the amount of times that I've been, wake up in the morning, about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, I start tweeting or researching for stories or calling sources, and then all of a sudden I see something trending. Shooting. It's now weekly. And I really don't want to hear about Chicago, because I went to cover Chicago. The problem in Chicago is not too many guns. The problem in Chicago is economic oppression. Second-class citizenship to black people. Actually, third-class citizenship. The problem in America, it's the guns. You are not going to eradicate mental illness in this country or any other country. It's not something you could totally, cease to exist. As long as the human brain is complicated, as long as the human brain has weaknesses, you're going to have people that want to do bad things. But we can do something to make sure either the mentally ill, the racist, the Islamophobic, whatever it is, mentally unstable people do not have easy access to guns or hundreds of rounds of ammunition When I read the report, the police officer said this could have been a bloodbath. And by the way, there's a lot of times where I take on the police. In this particular instance, you have to applaud the police. It seems like they stopped him from killing a lot more people and put their lives on the line. So not every police officer is terrible. Not every police officer is racist, and they do, day in and day out, put their lives on the line. We have to weed out bad police. We have to weed out racist police. We have to weed out police that are way, way too trigger happy. But in this particular case, they probably did save tens and dozens of lives. But these three people are now dead. I don't know the gunman's motive. It hasn't been reported yet. Who knows? Maybe he was going after an ex-girlfriend or an ex-boyfriend. Who knows? Maybe he was upset about something on television or something going on in the United States. Who knows? But what I do know is, Bernie talks, we are the only country that does not provide health care for its citizens. We're also the only country that allows its citizens to be massacred on a weekly basis. We're the only country where that is actually normal. And that's dangerous. Because for any of you watching right now, sometimes I even think about this. Sometimes, for some reason, I wake up in the morning and I say, oh, you know what? Today could be my last day. I know that's morbid, but sometimes the thought enters my mind. Today, something could happen. But it's no longer like accidents can happen. It's no longer like, well, today I could, accidentally get in a car accident, or I could accidentally fall down and hurt myself, or accidentally. It's now, I could go somewhere and just be at the wrong place at the wrong time and be shot out in the wild, wild west that is America. It's scary. It's also scary because we don't have public officials in this country. We don't have public servants in this country whose first priority is to protect the people they serve. That doesn't exist in America. We have craven politicians whose main interest is in staying in power and getting reelected. That's it. We'll see what happens. One story said somebody was in critical condition, so hoping there's no other deaths from this. What's really sick about it is, the media, they write up the story and then they move on. There's no further coverage. There's no media that's going to ask Ohio politicians tonight, what's your stance on gun control? What's your stance on background checks? What's your stance on people purchasing guns needing mental health checks? No one's going to be challenged. Not by the national media, not by the local media. And then the dangerous loop is just going to continue and continue and continue. It's sick. It's sick. As a reminder on YouTube, this is a super chat. So if you like what I'm saying, if you like my reporting, definitely feel free to contribute. And we're also going to be launching a GoFundMe next week, so I'm excited about that. Moving on from that terrible story, I don't really like saying thoughts and prayers. I think it's pretty hollow, but all I can do is report this and continue to stay on it. Part of the GoFundMe that we're going to be launching is telling you what specific stories we want to go cover in the field and how much money we need to go do that. And one of the stories I want to cover is following up on these massacres. Parkland, Newtown, as many as we could afford to go cover and to talk to the families who have lost children, to put a face to this. All the cameras go down for 2 or 3 days when it happens, and then you never hear about it again. We need to show the victims, the living victims, which are the family and friends. We need to challenge the politicians on the local level that are doing nothing to stop this. And that's what I'd like to do, where Ty and I could go and cover not even the new ones, but the old ones. It's hard to keep up with how many mass shootings there are. Moving on from threat of death by mass shooting to threats for women in America. Obviously, Brett Kavanaugh is having his hearing this week. Some of his hearing for Supreme Court Justice, some of his hearing has been overshadowed by the anonymous source gate of the Trump official who anonymously basically called Trump immoral and said he's unhinged and yada, yada, yada. I covered that yesterday. But today, to me, the most damaging, disqualifying information came out about Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, from the start, he was disqualifying because he's very clearly someone who would definitely lean towards overturning Roe versus Wade, which obviously gives women in America the right to safe and legal abortion. He's obviously in bed with corporations. He ain't going to touch Citizens United. He would obviously further cripple labor unions in this country as much as the Supreme Court has already done. He is not, even in the slightest, progressive-minded, and he is a politician pretending to be a legal scholar, as most of the Supreme Court is. But today, it came out that in 2003, an email, while he was an attorney for George W. Bush's administration, an email came out where he not so suddenly suggested Roe versus Wade is not settled law of the land. So let me read you this. Here we go. Oh, wrong one. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh on Wednesday described Roe versus Wade's right to abortion as settled, important precedent, yet he has also narrowly interpreted whether women can exercise that right. His past views, reinforced by testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, suggested Kavanaugh would permit government to impose stricter regulation of abortion. For example, with additional requirements that could delay the procedure or in stiffer rules for physicians who would perform it. With the departure of retired Justice Anthony Kennedy, abortion rights could hang on Kavanaugh's vote. His critics have warned that with a new Ninth Justice Kavanaugh, the court would outright reverse the 1973 milestone that made abortion legal nationwide. If Roe is overturned, abortion law would be set on a state-by-state basis, as President Donald Trump, who nominated Kavanaugh, declares he wants. In a memo Kavanaugh wrote in 2003, which was made public Thursday, he acknowledged that the Supreme Court can always overrule Roe versus Wade. Quote, I am not sure that all legal scholars refer to Roe as the settled law of the land at the Supreme Court level, since the court can always overrule its precedent, he wrote, adding that some conservative justices then on the court would do so. Roe and abortion rights are not an all-or-nothing proposition. Even as Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Samuel Alito, for example, have voted no to overturn Roe, they have narrowly interpreted its breadth and declined to strike down tough state restrictions on abortion. So I want to read one more time, because this was leaked. This was leaked today. The New York Times got it in a leaked memo when he was an attorney in 2003 for George W. Bush's administration. Quote, I'm not sure that all legal scholars refer to Roe as a settled law of the land at the Supreme Court level, since court can always overrule its precedent, he wrote, adding that some conservative justices then on the court would do so. As far as I'm concerned, with the caveat that, of course, I'm a man, but I do care about women's rights to control their own body, and I don't think privileged white men should be making decisions for women on their bodies. This information that came out is disqualifying. Period. In that email, how I interpret it, let me know what you think in the comments, he is not so subtly saying he thinks, like other judges, this is not so clear-cut, settled law of the land. He points to other legal scholars who do not feel it is law of the land. I don't know why he would be pointing to that unless he didn't, in some part, agree with those other legal scholars in that, yeah, it's open to interpretation. That's it. That's the ballgame. As far as I'm concerned, there is not one Democrat in this Congress who should vote for Brett Kavanaugh. Obviously, I don't think Republicans should anyway, but that's not going to happen. There is not one Democrat who should vote for Brett Kavanaugh. And I am talking about Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, who is up for re-election in November. I'm talking about Heidi Heitkamp, the senator from North Dakota, who is up for re-election in November. I am talking about Senator Jon Tester from Montana, who is up for re-election in November. These are the three, especially Manchin and Heitkamp, who, in my view, would vote for Manchin for Kavanaugh because they don't give a damn about the future of the country. They just want to get reelected. And if they do so, then progressives, frankly, all Americans, I don't care what your political persuasion is, should be outside their offices on a daily basis protesting until they resign from office. There are some things more important than getting reelected, and Roe versus Wade is one of them. I wasn't born in 1973, so I can't tell you what the history was, but a woman's right to choose is sacred. There is a separation of church and state, or supposedly they're supposed to be. You know, the fake constitutionalists like Ted Cruz, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Rand Paul, these strict constitutionalists, they follow the Constitution when it's good for them, not so much when it's not good for them. I mean, I'm not a big fan of President Obama, but let's call it what it is. Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, they're big into the Constitution. Well, the Constitution gave Barack Obama the right to appoint whoever the hell he wanted to appoint on the Supreme Court. He chose a centrist or slightly Republican judge, Merrick Garland. Well, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, when that happened, well, the Constitution doesn't matter. We need to wait till after the election. And now that Trump is appointing a nominee for Supreme Court before the election, we need to follow the Constitution. Any Ghost, thanks for getting the party started in the super chat. Thanks for the $5. I'll never forget your dapple coverage, bro. Keep giving them hell. Thank you, Any Ghost. And let me tell you, if you're coming to this late, we're going to launch a GoFundMe Monday. Not Monday, but probably next week. I don't know what date. And in the GoFundMe, we're going to be very, very specific about specific stories we want to go cover, which your funding could help us go do. One of those stories is I would like to go back to Standing Rock. Why do I want to go back to Standing Rock? Because it's not enough to go in somewhere when all the cameras are there. In Standing Rock's case, all the cameras were not there. When, the story is blowing up. But not enough journalists go back and follow up. I want to show you how the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is now. I've spoken with a lot of them, and things are even worse for them 2 years later. I want to show you what tribes like Standing Rock and other tribes are dealing with, not just with pipelines, but now mining. I want to show you the incessant and horrendous and systemic poverty they're dealing with. So that will be part of the GoFundMe. I'm going to list the stories we want to go cover. And of course, we're going to ask you, what do you want us to go cover? Because I want to go cover what the audience is interested in too. But the bottom line is, Brett Kavanaugh, in that email, we can't mess around with Roe versus Wade. So if there's even a hint, which I think that email was more than a hint, where he's saying, oh, well, a lot of legal scholars don't see it as a settled law of the land. Disqualification. Disqualified. He might still get through. I believe the Republicans have enough votes, although Senator Susan Collins, who's a Republican, she's always kind of a swing, she has said she will not vote for someone if she feels they would be open to overturning Roe versus Wade. Senator Susan Murkowski of Alaska, I believe, is the same. So it is a very, very far stretch that Democrats would be able to block him. But that doesn't mean every single Democrat. I'm talking to you, Joe Manchin in West Virginia. I'm talking to you, Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota. I'm talking to you, John Tester in Montana. I know you're not real progressives. I know you are fake progressives. I know you take endless money from big banks, especially Heitkamp. I know you take endless money from fossil fuel and coal mining companies. I'm talking to you, Joe Manchin. But some things are more important than your re-election. We cannot let Christian fundamentalists, privileged white men, and social Darwinists decide what women can and cannot do. It is not the state's role to make law for other citizens based on their religion. That is a basic tenet of what America is supposed to be. So that's what I think of that. And of course, when confronted about it today, Kavanaugh, shucked and jived and dodged, this and that. The bottom line is, his words are written. Here's the link if you want to read this story. His words are written. You read it right there. He points out, Roe versus Wade, not settled law. So if you're a woman, or if you're a man who cares about women, if you're a mother, if you're a grandmother, if you're anyone who's progressive, you better, and especially if you're a constituent of Joe Manchin, if you're a constituent of John Tester, if you're a constituent of Heidi Heitkamp, if you're a constituent of Joe Donnelly in Indiana up for re-election, you better get on the phone and you better tell them. You better not vote for Brett Kavanaugh. And you better organize, whether you're in local chapters of Our Revolution or other progressive groups, or your friends or whatever, and if they don't say, yes, or no, we're not voting for him, then you better start to put pressure on them, because none of these damn politicians are going to do the right thing unless you light a fire and an inferno up their butts. Sorry to be graphic, but that's the truth. Dee says Heidi has to go, 100%. Tayada says, missed your reporting. Why, thank you, I appreciate that. Moving on, from Roe versus Wade and Brett Kavanaugh being an extremist to Bernie Sanders' continued war on Amazon. I reported yesterday on his bill that he and Congressman Ro Khanna have represented or put forth, that companies like Amazon and Walmart and Burger King and McDonald's and all these corporations that pay their workers unlivable wages need to be paying for every single dollar their workers get of Medicaid, food stamps, or any other public assistance. Watch this video that Bernie tweeted out earlier. It's really, really something. Here we go.
It became clear that someone had urinated into a Coke bottle because they were afraid to go to the toilet. In late 2015, I set out to write a book about the low-pay economy in Britain, and The first company I worked at, I ended up in an Amazon warehouse. It's no exaggeration to say that it was probably the worst place I've ever worked in. And I'm someone who, when I was younger, did jobs in warehouses and in manual jobs for many years. The experience at Amazon was one I felt of exploitation. There were rules that were laid down for workers that you could not break. You were being given disciplinaries for going to the toilet. You were given disciplinaries for taking days off sick, even if you provided a doctor's note to say why you were off sick. And you were constantly tracked by management. Your productivity rates became so high that you ended up running around this huge warehouse just trying to keep up with your orders. And at the same time, there was a prohibition on running around the warehouse. You'd receive a disciplinary for that. The atmosphere of the Amazon warehouse I worked in had the atmosphere of what I imagined a prison would feel like. You weren't treated with any respect, with any dignity.
You claim that you found a bottle with urine in it at the warehouse.
One of the consequences of this obsession with productivity and these onerous targets we were given at Amazon was you were afraid to go to the toilet, because if you took 5 minutes to go to the toilet, you were then admonished about it by management when you returned to work. One day when I was working in the warehouse, I was walking down one of the huge aisles and I noticed a Coke bottle of kind of yellow liquid, and my instinctive reaction was, what on earth is that? And then on closer inspection, the lid was off and the smell became apparent. It became clear that someone had urinated into a Coke bottle because they were afraid to go to the toilet. It became very obvious why someone might have done that, because there was an atmosphere of fear around something as basic as going to the toilet. My account of the working conditions at Amazon is accurate. I went in there with an open mind. I didn't know that much about Amazon before I went in there. I didn't go in with any kind of agenda. There was a recent survey done by the group Organised, and they found that 74% of Amazon workers were afraid to go to the toilet because of productivity targets. Now, with that in mind, it doesn't seem a stretch to see that if people are worried about losing their jobs because of productivity targets, they might go so far as to urinate in a bottle if it means losing their job otherwise. Amazon, much of the stuff it's putting out now is pure public relations.
Last week, I asked Amazon workers to share their experiences with my office about wages and working conditions at Amazon. Many hundreds of them responded.
My position at Amazon was an order picker. I worked 10.5 hours a day, and I would walk in that time around 10 miles a day. It's very tiring work, and within that day, officially you'd have half an hour for a lunch break and then 2 separate 10-minute breaks. But in practice, it would be much less than that, because you're in such a huge warehouse, you have to go through security to get to the canteen. Your half-hour break was realistically 15 to 20 minutes, and your 10-minute break was 5 minutes.
On the issue of working conditions, I'm very proud of our working conditions.
If I was Jeff Bezos, I would be ashamed of the working conditions at Amazon. The stories have gone on for long enough that he can't plead ignorance to what's going on in his warehouses. There are policies which are set, which are coming down from on high.
I'm very proud of the wages that we pay.
The wealthiest man in the world, the head of the biggest multinational in the world, is effectively saying that he can't afford to pay workers a living wage, and he can't afford to treat workers with the dignity that all workers deserve. The initial response to the work that I did was, first of all, they wanted to meet up for coffee with me, as typically corporations tend to do when a journalist writes something negative about them. Then it moved on to trying to get me to edit certain things I was writing and paint Amazon in a more favourable light. And then, secondly, it was workers in Amazon's warehouses reaching out to me with stories similar to my own.
Maybe that's why Amazon is experimenting with drones, because
I think you get the hang of it. I watched that video, and I was honestly, it really puts a face on what Bernie has been talking about and what others have been talking about. There's been a lot of reports in the last couple months on Amazon. Basically, it's a quasi-Hunger Games environment. It's a quasi-Hunger Games environment. keywords in that video. They're being tracked. They're being tracked. Their workers. They have to piss. They have to piss into bottles because they don't have the time to go to the bathroom. I mean, of course, this is not comparable to slavery of, America's founding, but these kinds of working conditions are not so far off. These are not workers who have an ability to have any breaks, any real breaks. These are not workers who have an ability to wake up in the morning and actually look forward to going to work. These are not workers who could learn any actual skills to better their future. These are not workers who could do the things you need to do in life to be healthy, like have a full meal for lunch. Take breaks where you're not moving all day at work. If you've ever had back problems, or if you've ever had physical problems, your doctor or your chiropractor or whatever will tell you, make sure you get up from your work desk every 20 minutes to a half hour. Take a walk so you're not stiff. I need to do that. I don't do that often. This is not so far off from indentured servitude. I mean, let's put aside the starvation wages for a second. But look at that video. And that was basically an undercover journalist in the United Kingdom. I mean, these workers are treated like robots. And by the way, it's not so different if you go to a fast food place. You ever go to a drive-thru at McDonald's or Burger King? I've done it way too much. On the road, eating like crap. All of these people, you barely see a smile on these workers' faces because they're so stressed. Each one of them is doing the job of 5 or 6 people. And then you want to talk about mental health crises. Then you want to talk about the need for food stamps and Medicaid because they're not getting paid a living wage. They are essentially these workers, let's look at Amazon for a second, are essentially, it's maybe not a physical beating from Jeff Bezos, but it's not so far off from getting beaten down every single day. In the video, walking 10 miles a day in that warehouse, getting 15 minutes to eat lunch, pissing in bottles because you're afraid to go to the bathroom. Progressive endometriosis says, even as a white-collar worker, they make you a servant. And what is this for? This is so they're all doing this so we could order chapstick right to our apartment, so we could order whatever the hell we want right to our home. Well, that's all good and well. It's nice to have the luxury of those kinds of services, but that comes at a cost. I think most Americans do not want products delivered to their home if they saw videos like that. And just like, we applaud Nike for doing a courageous thing and standing with Colin Kaepernick, we shouldn't forget that Nike makes its products on foreign child slaves, basically. Sitting in fairly air-conditioned, poor working conditions in factories in far countries to make you your shoes and shirts and hats and whatever. The bottom line is, it's not only about paying criminally low wages, it's about criminal treatment towards other human beings. Let me read you some of the joint op-ed that Bernie Sanders and Congressman Ro Khanna wrote. Headline, it's time to get billionaires off welfare. Year after year, decade after decade, Republicans in Washington have lectured the American people about the need for welfare reform. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan failed against a fictitious welfare queen driving a Cadillac. Just a few years ago, Republicans turned their attention to a young surfer who use the food stamp program to purchase lobster. But if you listen closely, you will never hear much talk from our Republican colleagues about some of the biggest welfare recipients in America. I'm just going to interject. You don't really hear a lot of talk from Democrats about it either. The billionaire owners of some of the most profitable corporations in our country. Here are just a few examples. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, is the wealthiest person on earth, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. He's now worth $168 billion. In fact, since the beginning of this year, his wealth has increased by about $277 million every single day. $277 million every single day. Meanwhile, Bezos continues to pay many thousands of his Amazon employees wages that are so low they must rely on food stamps, Medicaid, or public housing in order to survive. In effect, the middle-class taxpayers of this country are subsidizing the low wages paid by the richest person on earth. That's nuts. But Bezos and Amazon aren't alone. The Walton family of Walmart and many other billionaire-owned large and profitable corporations also get richer because of taxpayer support for their low-paid employees. The Walton family of Walmart is the wealthiest family in the country with a net worth of over $160 billion. This one family has owned more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. That's not an oligarchy, what is? Meanwhile, just like Amazon, Walmart pays its workers wages that are so inadequate, many of them are forced to depend upon public assistance programs at a cost of some $6.2 billion a year to taxpayers in order to survive. The fast food industry is another major recipient of corporate welfare. While the co-owner of Burger King, Jorge Paulo Lemann, has a net worth of about $25 billion, low wages at this fast food chain cost U.S. taxpayers an estimated $356 million a year. And it's not just Burger King. McDonald's workers are actually encouraged to sign up for government assistance, meaning the company fully acknowledges that it pays its employee wages that are non-livable. In total, 52% of fast food workers rely on public assistance programs to make ends meet. Over half rely on public assistance if you're a fast food worker. The wealthy owners of big airliners are also welfare recipients. While American Airlines made nearly $2 billion in net profits last year, its CEO is on track to make $31 million in total compensation this year. 27% of workers at its subsidiary Envoy Air, which is over 16,000 employees, need food stamps and other forms of public assistance because of the inadequate wages they receive. The working families of the middle class in this country should not have to subsidize the wealthiest people in the U.S. That's absurd. That's what a rigged economy is about. The fact is that if employers in this country simply paid workers a living wage, taxpayers would save about $150 billion a year on federal assistance programs, and millions of workers will be able to live in dignity and security. I'll put the link to the story in the video when we put the video up. I also want to point out, if you are marking your calendar, next week is the 10-year anniversary of the global financial crash that you're probably still recovering from. What do you call the $757 million bailout? If that isn't corporate welfare, what is? The banks get corporate welfare too, because when they fuck it up again, and they will fuck it up again, they're already playing with student loans the same way they played with housing mortgages. No media coverage of that, what they're doing with these student loans, packaging it into hot, toxic dog shit. I'm telling you, and I said this yesterday, I'm going to say it again today. Bernie Sanders, this is a winning message if he runs for president again. Because if there's one thing that Bernie Sanders supporters and Donald Trump supporters agree on, is Jeff Bezos shouldn't be making $277 million a year, nor should the Waltons, nor should any of these CEOs. Rust Belt, where Hillary Clinton lost, this is a popular message. Republicans were equally against the bailouts of 2008. And all these people going after Bernie now. Well, this is going to mean people aren't, these companies are going to lay people off and aren't going to hire people if they have to pay them a living wage. Good. Good. Let them. They're going to pretty much have no one left. We cannot subsidize Jeff Bezos so he can get 3 extra yachts this week. It is time for all of us to stand up. Not only, it's not just greed, it's immoral. There's no human being that needs that much money, but most importantly, if you're a human being and you have any moral compass, you shouldn't want for your success to come at the expense of the vulnerable below you. By the way, the very people that are responsible for your success. Does anyone here think Jeff Bezos is some revolutionary? And he does something so special every day that he should make $277 million? Who the hell is making Jeff Bezos that money? The very workers that are peeing in bottles at Amazon, so they don't because they can't go to the bathroom. It's unreal. Hi, Myra, on Facebook, one of my favorite viewers. The greed has got to end. And this is a winning message for Bernie Sanders, whether he runs in 2020 or he doesn't. Thank you for watching. Public service announcement. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, what are you doing? What are you doing? Patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. If you came to this late, we're launching a GoFundMe next week. We're going to have the specific stories we want to get out on the road and cover. Just need some support. So stay tuned for that. Ty, my cameraman, photojournalist, partner in crime, is going to be flying in. I think he's in flight right now to New York. So if he's able to, we're going to go live together tomorrow. So you'll see a little Ty Bayless tomorrow. And again, if you've been following, we are working on a major story that should be out earliest October. A massive story that I think once it's out, you'll understand why it took so long. Definitely watch the other videos that we just put up today. Definitely, if you haven't, enter your email. Go to jordansheridan.com, enter your email. We're trying to grow our email list. That's the best way to grow a business, an honest business. It's not at the mercy of corporate warlords. We're not taking those people's money. Thank you for watching.